Hey everyone, this is a topic I've been wanting to discuss for quite a while, a subject I've been wanting to give my thoughts on, and since I have some future plans coming up, I thought right now would be the perfect time to create and release this video. And so today I am discussing and putting some defense on the ROM hack for Dodonpachi known as Dodonpachi Arrange. For those who are not familiar with it, Dodonpachi Arrange was created by Trap15 and was released in 2012, at least going by the forum dates, somewhere in there. And I also believe it was his first ROM hack. And just going by the responses on the forum, and then also responses that I've seen talking to other players about this directly and in Discord and all those types of things, I feel like Dodonpachi Arrange has definitely gotten an unfair amount of criticism, an unfair reputation. And so in this video, I'm going to try my best to put some defense on this ROM hack's name, because I know there are some certain players, especially Bananamatic from what I recall, that were very vocally critical of this, but I also feel like the criticisms that were leveled towards Dodonpachi Arrange, I don't think are fully warranted, and also are sort of very specifically focused on what their expectations are rather than what this game offers. Basically, I think a lot of this is just pretty reactionary and a little bit rooted in some old man syndrome, I guess you could say, some boomer mentality. So what is Dodonpachi Arrange as far as how does it differ from regular Dodonpachi? So I've actually played quite a bit of Dodonpachi Arrange, and up until now I have sort of been hesitant to give my thoughts on the game and stuff like that. Not because I have negative things to say or anything like that, but because I didn't want... so I empathize a lot with Trap because if you look at... I'll throw up some quotes here. So you look at the quotes he received when he released this game, especially, back in 2012, and then look at some of the quotes I received when I released Shmup Arch. You'll see that there's a lot of comparable sort of reactions between the two, right? I remember people saying that I was desecrating the genre or corrupting the genre and stuff like that. I'll throw some of the quotes on the screen and throughout the video. And I'm going through some of these quotes about Trap's Arrange and stuff, and how he's I don't know what, like he's desecrating, basically making Dodonpachi bad, and he's ruining the game, blah 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 blah. Of course, I think these are absolutely narrow-minded, because the whole point of a ROM hack is to give an alternative way to play the game. And also, I think a lot of people greatly underestimate the difficulty of putting a ROM hack together. So with Super Metroid, I did attempt to put a ROM hack together. I did get so far as changing the color palettes and stuff like that. I actually still have that ROM hack from time to time. I still play it and made Samus blue and all this cool stuff. But as far as like creating whole new levels in the code and stuff, I wasn't having a whole lot of luck, and I even had some like ROM hacking tools, just because it's a very delicate process. So when you look at Dodonpachi Arrange as a ROM hack, there's no denying it is a pretty impressive effort, especially since this is on in MAME. It's not like in Super Nintendo where the person has a lot of tools to go off of. And so I think a lot of people at the time really underestimated Trap's ingenuity with all the changes he was able to make. And I also think that people weren't really willing to explore the game and also sort of say what the merits of the differences are. In fact, I was going through the thread, and a lot of people didn't even comment on a lot of the differences between Dodonpachi Arrange and regular Dodonpachi that could make it interesting. They were just very quick to focus in on like bugs and stuff like that. And I don't think that's an issue as far as like, hey, there's a bug here, we need to fix this. But I think it's the attitude that people had that I had a problem with, because it wasn't a constructive attitude. Same thing, I kind of went through this with Shmup Arch, right? When I first released Shmup Arch, I had some people who were giving me a lot of constructive feedback, like Jamers and Pearl were like, hey, you could fix this here, you could improve that here. Some other people too who kind of disappeared from the scene or something like that. So shout outs to them. Kind of giving me constructive feedback, and I'm like, okay, and I spent hours and hours doing that, and people were doing that on the thread, but there was sort of this undertone of like contempt or like bad mouthing rather than trying to be constructive of like, hey, let's work on this, let's build this. And this is what really frustrates me the most about Dodonpachi Arrange. Isn't the game itself, but the the missed opportunity people had to like encourage Trap and basically get him to do more Dodonpachi ranges, because after he did this, he went on and worked on other games, and I think those Romhacks are also excellent. But I'm a Dodonpachi player, and I salivate at the idea of having more Dodonpachi Arranges and more Dodonpachi Romhacks, and I can't get enough of this game. So it does make me really regretful that basically I feel like the community were being a bunch of like narrow-minded boomers and weren't trying to like work with Trap and encourage him a little more. And I think he did make a lot of really great improvements to the Romhack. It's hard to tell like what the changes have been between when he first released it and the response you're seeing on the thread, because that didn't really last a whole lot of time. But a lot of the issues that they'll point out to on the thread, on the version I'm playing, which I think is the most recent update, those issues don't seem to exist anymore. I don't know how prevalent they are. And so I think it's a little bit unfair too, where basically you have players like Bananamatic and stuff just bad-mouthing the game all the time, but they didn't also acknowledge the improvements that were made from the point that they played, at least in my opinion. And so it's actually kind of hard for me at least, to pin down what all the improvements have been over the past time. But I have played the game quite a bit, and let me just point out my observations on the differences between Dodonpachi Arrange and Dodonpachi, and why I think Dodonpachi Arrange is a much more valid ROM hack than people give it credit for. And I feel like playing it isn't just something you play for memes, which is kind of like the attitude everyone has said when I've talked to other players about, hey, what do you think about Dodonpachi Arrange and stuff? Most people have said, well, you just play it for memes and stuff. But I also think a lot of people weren't acknowledging some of the features within Dodonpachi Arrange that can change it. For instance, if you go into the dip switch settings, a lot of people talk about, oh, it's easy because you can just bomb spam your way through the game and you get lots of extends. Well, if you go into the dip switch settings, there's actually tons of different, you can actually really, really limit the amount of extends you get. I think you can limit to only 2 or 3 extends or something like that. But you can also limit it, instead of getting an extend every 20 mil, you get an extend every 40 mil. And so that makes a pretty big difference as far as how the game plays and stuff like that. Other changes that people haven't really commented too much on is the combining ship types, which I think is really interesting. And so basically the way it works is, I'm going to talk about the strong style, because the weak style seems more of like kind of a little bit more for the memes and stuff. But the strong style is really interesting because what it does is it takes the strong laser, or the strong shot of the ship type, so like ship C, it uses the strong shot, and then it uses actually the weak laser, but then it gives the ship the movement speed of the fast laser. So it's not the same, it's not exactly taking the laser and the shot and just shoving them together into an OP ship. It's kind of this middle ground where it takes the shot type, but it gives it the movement speed of the laser type, but it still retains the damage and properties. I don't know, it might actually cut through stuff like the full laser. You'll see in the video here anyway, if it does that or not. But I do know it does the damage of the weaker laser. I know that because playing CS, I'm really familiar with the damage of that. And so that's actually a really interesting ship type, especially the A-type ship. I also think that's a really interesting ship type to play. It's kind of an interesting middle ground between something like an expert ship, like in a DOJ, and the regular ships in DDP. Another observation is, of course, the chaining is a lot more lenient in Dodonpachi Arrange. And I think a lot of people will focus, in the first loop, it's extremely lenient compared to the original. But again, this is an Arrange, so it's like, yeah, what would it be like if Dodonpachi had lenient chaining? You guys can play it and find out. Another thing, though, too, is that when you get into the second loop, it's really not all that much more lenient over the regular second loop, because it's, I believe, anyway, I don't have the hard data here, but I believe it's consistent between the loops, like the chaining timer. It's not like in the second loop you get extra long chaining. Maybe there's a slight bump. I can't totally tell, but I think it's pretty similar. So another thing that's a huge change between the two that really interests me is there's no maximum bonus anymore. No one commented on that. That's a game changer. So Dodonpachi Arrange does not have any maximum bonus. So your basically your strongest source of scoring is going to be the chaining and the bees, and cutting out that maximum bonus opens up a lot of interesting things, and I think that's kind of what Trap was going for. And also, I believe you can like chain through bombs and stuff like that. I can't really remember exactly how that works, but the chaining, like you can use bombing for scoring basically and stuff, and I think that was kind of the idea, and I think that's a really cool concept to explore. And what really frustrated me about the reception people gave the game, it wasn't like, oh, okay, this is different. let's hone in on these differences. Let's like, you know, really capitalize in this and see how different and stuff. Instead, everyone's just like, oh, this is easy. You can bomb spam through it. It's broken. Let's all move on. Dodonpachi's better, right? That's kind of the attitude people had. And I think that's very, very typical shmup forum attitude, right? Let's just focus in on the negatives and dismiss it. That's just that's how Shmup Arch was. They tried to do that with Shmup Arch, and I was like, no. And if you go through the thread, you can see they basically just bully Trap out of working on it anymore, you know? And I don't blame him. I've been on the receiving end of that so many times that I definitely empathize with his position, and it does feel like, okay, forget it. Especially with like a Romhack, that's way more work than what I was doing with Shmup Arch. That's way more work. And so, yeah, imagine the guy puts in all this work and then everyone just immediately dismisses it. No one sits and thinks, wait a minute here. This is a real important opportunity to get someone to do all kinds of fun stuff to Dodonpachi and to create an arrange of it that would be really interesting. And I think if you are willing to like mess around with what we got, there's still a lot of potential there that makes it pretty fun to play, makes it fun to play, because the funny thing is that you can badmouth Dodonpachi Arrange because, oh, it's not like the original Dodonpachi, it's not as hardcore, it does this to the chaining system, but it's actually extremely fun to play. I enjoy playing it a lot, and I am actually interested in exploring it more for scoring and like trying different scoring stuff. And Trap did a lot of little things in it that people didn't recognize either, like Hibachi. The Hibachi fight is actually harder in Dodonpachi Arrange than it is in regular Dodonpachi. Now, people weren't saying that because in the version they were playing, they had lots of extends. So if you go into Hibachi with lots and lots of extends, yeah, that's nice. But if you're playing it with that 400 million extend, which I recommend rather than the 20 or the 40 million instead of the 20 mil, bump that up to 40. And then if you want to be real hardcore, play it with like limited extends. But even with that 40, that's really not that much more over the regular Dodonpachi. And the thing is, the Hibachi fight is actually harder in Dodonpachi Arrange, sort of. Like, it's sort of harder because I believe he goes in and sort of slows down and makes the patterns more consistent, which I think's a cool change. But the big difference there is that you don't get as many bombs on respawn as you do in Dodonpachi. So my strategies of like bomb spamming your way through B into the final pattern don't actually work that well because you have to dodge the patterns now because you don't have as many resources coming into it as you would with regular Dodonpachi because you respawn with less bombs. No one really commented on that. And then also he fixes the final pattern. I say fixes the final pattern, and I believe it's consistent throughout the runs, but it's slowed down. And well, I don't know if I'd want that to be permanently changed in actual regular Dodonpachi, but in an Arrange, I think that's a really cool change. I think that's a great change because now when it comes to focusing on scoring, you can try and focus in on getting those boss hits, right? And then what the thing is with the C type, you have a weaker laser, but you have the faster movement speed. So it's like perfect for getting tons and tons of Hibachi boss hits that you wouldn't be able to get regularly. There's just a lot of stuff you could do in this game for scoring, and I'm really interested in exploring this, especially since I'm basically playing Dodonpachi all the time. It's like a nice Arrange. It's like, hey, I want to play Dodonpachi, but I don't want to play Dodonpachi. And so I've been playing a lot of Dodonpachi Arrange and enjoying it. I'm going to start streaming it, and I do plan, so the big thing is I do plan to play Dodonpachi Arrange in Shmup Slam 3. And I want to try and come up with some new cool scoring strategies in it, because I think there's a lot of stuff you could do in it that could be really interesting that's different than regular Dodonpachi. And I just find it really frustrating that people were so quick to dismiss this. And the reason why I haven't wanted to talk about it too much is, like, it's a sore subject, right? And then I don't want Trap to think I'm like memeing on him or making fun of his game, because that's what basically everyone else has done, and I don't want to do that. So when I play Dodonpachi Arrange and Shmup Slam 3, I'm not playing it as a meme game. I'm not playing it like Bermuda Triangle or something like that. I am playing it as I think this is a really interesting Romhack, and I want to explore what kind of crazy scoring strategies you can do in it that you wouldn't be able to do in regular Dodonpachi. And just because those scoring strategies are different, I don't think it means, oh, this is a bad arrange, because it doesn't have max bonuses and it's not, and the chaining isn't as tight, so it's bad. It's like, well, now that we have more lenient chaining, what can we do with that? You know, how can we explore that and get more scoring and come up with new strategies? And I think a lot of it is just people didn't want to do that or didn't have an interest. They just wanted to play the game as it always was played. And if Dodonpachi, I think what people wanted with Dodonpachi Arrange is like a slight variation on Dodonpachi or something like that, rather than a big change and stuff. But I think it's really interesting. I think, and you still have like a lot of the strategies you have to do. It's not like all of a sudden the game's super easy, especially if you switch up the extents, right? So I'm going to be playing Dodonpachi Arrange in Shmup Slam 3, and I didn't want to have it look like I'm playing the game to meme on it or to be cheeky. I'm actually playing it seriously. I think the game's really interesting and fun, so that's why I made this video, and shout outs to Trap for making it. And if Trap ever wants to make another Dodonpachi ROM hack, I'd be excited for that, so see ya. Oh, let me thank my patrons, by the way. So, thank you to Dingo, Anthony A, Ben Wynn, Brian Shiver, Corio, Dunpeel2064, Eric H, Full Set, Retro Schmupper, Gus, Kiwi, Joe Angelo, John, Gameboy Guru, Kay, Quentin, Malaise, Mark Sloan, Martin Worrell, Maz, Meher Calendrian, Nathaniel Davis, and Electron, Okla Kugels, Point Blank, STG, Rhizosis, Smacky Factor, Segumo, Plasmo, and Utakaya. Thanks for watching.